Hello and welcome to the CUFI UK podcast for Zion's sake. My name is Alastair. This is Alex.
Hello.
And we'd like to welcome you as we discuss some of the latest issues regarding Israel.
Yep.
Alex, in the past week, over 850 rockets have been fired from Gaza into Israel. Yeah. It's been a very challenging week for Israel. It's been a week of some struggles, some successes as well. So perhaps you'd like to begin by just explaining why is this happening and what is Israel facing right now, because this is an ongoing situation as we're recording this podcast.
Yeah, that's right. So we're recording this on Friday afternoon, and there may be some other things that happen after this airs. But yes, right now there have been over 850 rockets fired at Israel from Palestinian Islamic Jihad terrorists. It's an ongoing situation to the week before. Last week we were talking about 100 PIJ rockets being fired into Israel, and this is basically a continuation. There's some people trying to frame it as, oh, Israel started this conflict. Well, actually, no. Israel just had a delayed response to the 100 rockets that PIJ fired into Israel.
So let's just go back a little bit, because last week's podcast we were discussing those 100 rockets.
Yep.
Palestinian Islamic Jihad were responsible for firing those.
Yeah.
It was only within a space of less than a day. Yeah. And that was in response, or the rocket fire was in response to the death of a terrorist within Israeli custody who himself was on hunger strike.
Yeah, so he refused to eat.
Refused to eat.
Yeah, and refused
died.
Medical intervention from Israel.
But Palestinian Islamic Jihad, PIJ, really, you could say, took advantage of that situation because there were other things going on as well. So one of the things is PIJ, some of those commanders have been involved in trying to transport missile launchers from Gaza, which of course is a terrorist stronghold, to Judea and Samaria, also known as the West Bank.
Yep.
And there are these things going on in the background, which Israel is very conscious of.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Israel is watching what these terrorists are doing, and it's responding to their actions.
Yeah.
And
Why do you think there was a delay? Sorry.
Well, my personal view is the delay was caused because when Palestinian Islamic Jihad fired 100 rockets into Israel, when that happens normally, the commanders of the terror group go into hiding. So they go underground. Israel can't reach them, or if it can reach them, it's going to put civilians at risk and so forth. So my view is they went underground, waited for the dust to settle after the rockets were fired, and then they came back to their homes, and that was when Israel struck them.
So going to the beginning of this week, the week we're in now, we say there's been over 866 rockets, but let's just go before that, because Israel made some very significant and successful, in military terms, strikes against this terrorist group, the PIJ. And it is probably, in terms of operations, the operation is called Operation Arrow and Shield.
Shield and Arrow.
Shield and Arrow, sorry.
The other way around.
Right way round.
Yeah. So Shield first, they're defending themselves, and then they're attacking.
That's significant, isn't it?
Yeah,
Shield
exactly.
first.
Yep.
Defensive first, and then attacking.
Yeah. Yeah, and so with the commanders, they were targeted. Like, Israel doesn't normally target the leaders of terror groups, but it changed its tune, and actually it forewarned, like, there were some Israeli officials a week ago saying, actually, it's not out of the question that we would target, that they would target commanders. And they were sending a message to Palestinian Islamic Jihad and to Hamas and other terror groups that if you carry on with what you're doing, we will take out the top brass. And even today, there's an official from Israel who have said, we're actually doing this to send a message not only to PIJ but to Hamas. And one caveat I just want to say, we keep calling it PIJ, Palestinian Islamic Jihad. If you look at Israeli official feeds, they might call it Islamic Jihad, or the official name is something like Islamic Jihad in Palestine or something like that. But we call it PIJ. It's the sort of general term that people use. And the three commanders who were targeted, they were asleep in bed when Israel struck them. And the first one, I'm going to probably say these names a bit wrong, but Khalil Bahitini. He was a senior operation officer of PIJ in Gaza, and so he was responsible for rocket attacks from Gaza towards Israel. He was responsible for approving and carrying out all terror actions in the north of the Gaza Strip, and he was also a member of PIJ's military council, and he had active contact with senior members of PIJ, so he was a coordinator and an operator. The second commander who was taken out was Jahed Anam, and he was one of the most senior members of PIJ. He had previously served as he had previously served multiple high-profile positions, but his current position when he was assassinated was he was the PIJ's military council secretary, and he was responsible for coordinating attacks. He was responsible for transferring weapons and money between Hamas and PIJ, and he also worked just in general, basically, of promoting PIJ terrorism. And the third person was Tarek Az-al-Din, and he was PIJ's coordinator of terrorism in Judea and Samaria. So this is what you were saying earlier, Alastair, where this was the attempts of getting rockets and weaponry from Gaza into the West Bank, which is obviously a lot more tricky for Israel to deal with because there's more of an open border between the West Bank and Israel. Attacks could have been a lot more.
It would be a game changer.
Well, it would have been a game. Yes, definitely. Yeah. I mean, there haven't been rockets fired from the West Bank. And by the way, the West Bank is Judea and Samaria, ancient land of Israel, of Judah. And yeah, so we will call it Judea and Samaria and the West Bank interchangeably, but just to let people know about that. But yeah, so if you look at these three commanders, Israel was really trying to take out PIJ's operational ability to fire rockets into Israel. It was trying to take out the commander who was dealing with the coordination between Hamas and PIJ, and it was also dealing with taking out PIJ's cooperation between the terrorists in Gaza and the terrorists in the West Bank. So that was the three areas it was trying to achieve.
Yes, and this, of course, occurred on Tuesday.
Yeah, this was Tuesday.
These strikes against these three, and they were targeted strikes. They were when Israel takes military action, is very, very careful to make sure that the strikes are targeting the terrorists, that there is as little collateral casualties, damage as possible, or casualties as possible. And that is quite significant because, in contrast, when we consider then how the PIJ responded to Israel's counter-terrorism operation, let's call it what it is, Israel has been inundated with rocket fire over the last few days, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. A ceasefire was broken last night, Thursday evening. But that only lasted 13 hours because right now, literally as we speak, PIJ themselves have broken that ceasefire by firing more rockets. So that's going on right now.
Yeah, and Israel, by the way, have said this morning that they're not going to negotiate because negotiations are going on between Israel, Egypt, and PIJ. Egypt is the middleman trying to bring peace. But Israel have said, look, if they're firing rockets, we're not going to negotiate.
Negotiating on the fire, that's right.
Yeah.
So 9th of May, IDF targeted 3 Islamic Jihad terrorists. The 860 rockets, these are not targeting military positions in Israel. They're targeting civilian areas.
Yeah.
And that's the difference. When Israel targets terrorists, they try and avoid civilian casualties.
Yeah.
But when the Palestinian terrorists target Israel, they deliberately target Israeli civilians, and that's a big moral difference.
Yeah, massive. And the thing is, there's a lot of thoughts I have right now about all these different things going on because the way the terrorists operate in Gaza is, people have probably heard this before, they're not just committing a war crime, they're committing a double war crime. They are embedding themselves within civilian populations in Gaza and they are firing their rockets towards civilians in Israel. So they're endangering lives in Gaza because if Israel strikes them, there is a chance that they could accidentally wound or kill civilians. Yes. And that's what the terrorists want. They're using the people of Gaza as human shields to carry out their terror activities. And likewise, like you were saying, they are firing these rockets indiscriminately into Israel, and they are only targeting civilian populations. And that is a war crime. And every single one of those 866 rockets, or probably more now as we're speaking, every single one of those rockets is a war crime, and it should be condemned by everyone.
Absolutely. Everyone. I think 1 in 5 of the rockets fired this week landed in Gaza.
Yeah. That's right. Yes. So 1 in 5 either didn't reach. Well, they didn't reach Israel, so they either landed in the sea or they landed in Gaza.
Yes.
And as you're probably aware, our viewers may not be, the Palestinian terrorists have actually killed more of their own people than they've killed Israelis. 1 Israeli has been killed, and that, by the way, was a result. They've said this morning that it was a result of the Iron Dome system not activating properly, and so that rocket managed to get through. And then in Gaza, there's been at least 4 civilians, including children, who have died because Palestinian rockets have landed inside Gaza onto family homes in Gaza and killed them. So the terrorists are very ineffective at what they're doing.
Yes,
but that's really not the point. They're trying to terrorize Israel.
Yes,
and they're being effective in that.
Yes, yeah. I mean, millions of Israelis have been entering bomb shelters. A tremendous amount of investment has been put in to try and protect civilians. Yeah. So if you think about it, Israel is protecting civilians in Israel the best it possibly can. Yeah. Absolutely, everything possible. Yeah. I'm going to come into the anti-missile work in a minute, but the bomb shelters, etc.
The siren, they've got
it is also trying
systems.
Yes, and it's also trying to minimize casualties in Gaza.
Yeah, exactly.
Completely different to the Palestinian terrorists, who have no regard for their own civilians. Yeah. They have no regard for Israelis, of course, because, as you just said. And it really is such a contrast. And these are the messages that we need to be conveying here to our politicians, to the media, to the international community. Yeah. Because these are the things, if we are to defend Israel, we have to make these, and they're quite simple sort of differences, but it really, the enemies of Israel are so deliberate in trying to manipulate and twist the facts that if you do not give attention to what is really happening, suddenly this whole situation, and we've seen it so many times before, that what Israel is trying to do and is doing will get flipped on its head, and suddenly there is a media battle, there is a political battle which is against the state of Israel. Yeah. And this is, we really need to pray that the truth will prevail. And I think we have an important role as CUFI. Those listening have an important role as well, because in whatever situation we may find ourselves individually, whether it be at church, raising these things to pray, whether it is writing to our MPs when we hear about these things, it's really important that as defenders of Israel that we do take this moral stand. Yeah. I think you said earlier in one of your clips, I really liked it, you said, Israel is good, Palestinian terrorists are bad. Yeah. Right?
Well, they're evil.
Oh, evil, sorry, is what you said. Misquoted you on probably one of them. There we go. But that is such a simple thing, and it's these basic messages that we need to get out there. And I just want to remind our listeners and viewers that by supporting CUFI, you are helping to do that.
Yeah, definitely.
We're on the front line, not militarily, but we are on the front line of this battle for truth.
Yeah. And
so if you are listening to this and you would like to support CUFI, then we do invite you to please consider donating to the work. It's www.cufi.org.uk/donate75. And if you do donate to the work of CUFI, by going to that link, we will very gladly send you some goodies to mark Israel's Independence Day. 75 years on the 14th of May.
Yep, this Sunday. So, so some viewers may be wondering, hang on, didn't we celebrate this a couple of weeks ago? Well,
that's right, yes.
Well, actually, we did. But the Hebrew calendar is slightly different to the Gregorian calendar. So the 14th of May is the actual date in the Gregorian calendar when Israel became a nation in 1948.
Yes.
But obviously the Hebrew calendar changes based on the lunar calendar, basically. And so, this week we get to celebrate it again, that Israel was reborn as a nation, that the promises and the prophecies of the Bible were fulfilled as the nation of Israel was once reborn. I think if people do want to support what we're doing, this is a great time to get some gifts from us for their support. And they're reminders of praying for Israel each day. We do really encourage people as well just to pray for the peace of Jerusalem.
Yes.
Just every day, add it to your prayers, a short prayer just to keep Israel in your prayers and your thoughts. It's really important.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But obviously at this time, even though it is a time of celebration for the 75th, obviously Israel is in a situation right now with Palestinian Islamic Jihad where it's not in necessarily a celebratory mood because it has to deal with these things. But going back to what you said earlier about the different ways that Israel is looking after its people, I think it's really important to highlight to people just how much Israel has invested and leads the world in developing technology and systems to protect its people. And it's completely at odds with the Palestinians. Like the Palestinians, not every Palestinian, also Palestinian terrorists. And by the way, it's important to point out here, Israel is at war with terror, not with Palestinians. Israel's at war with Palestinian Islamic Jihad, not at war with Gaza. And there is this false narrative that comes out that Israel's just bombing Gaza and all this stuff. This is one of the most Israel is one of the most humane and careful militaries in the world. It's dealing with terrorists, and yet it's dealing with terror. And this is the same as if the UK, when we deal with ISIS, this is the kind of group that Israel is dealing with right now. Palestinian Islamic Jihad is very similar to it is a radical Islamist terror group that is seeking the destruction of Israel, and it wants to murder Israel and the Jewish people. And Israel is a military force that is dealing with this in the most careful way possible. And I just really think it's important to point that out.
And also, Alex, of course, the motive, if we're looking at motives, the motive is, the undermining, but ultimately the destruction of the Jewish state. And on the 14th, the day after Israel declared independence, surrounding Arab armies invaded Israel. And here we are today on the 75th anniversary. And I think it's really important to highlight the sort of to put into perspective the magnitude of this attack on Israel, on its statehood, on its sovereignty, on its independence, and rightful existence. 866 rockets as of last night were fired. Can you imagine the mass casualties that would have been inflicted upon the cities in Jerusalem, in Israel, if there had been no anti-missile defense system? Imagine it.
I know. We would be talking about hundreds of casualties.
We'd be talking about hundreds.
And the response from Israel to stop that would have been far more catastrophic as well.
Yes.
Because if Israel was losing if hundreds of Israelis were being killed, there would be a full military operation from Israel into Gaza right now.
Yes.
To stop it, because they wouldn't have time to pinpoint and be accurate.
Yes.
Because they would be having to react very quickly to stop the threat against them. There would be far more civilian casualties on the Palestinian side if Israel didn't protect its own civilians using the Iron Dome.
So actually defending Israel is a key to maintaining peace in the region.
Yeah.
And this is one of the
it's like a flip reverse.
This is one of the things that those who are unsure about supporting Israel or on the fence or even against Israel is like, this is one of the things we need to knock on the door and try and persuade is that defending Israel is the best thing we can do to promote peace in the region. Standing with Israel.
Yeah, and the best way to defend the Palestinians is to defend Israel.
To defend Israel.
Yeah, it's like a counterintuitive way of thinking.
Yeah,
but it's the truth. And there's military experts, including Colonel Richard Kemp, who have said that exact same thing. They've gone to the United Nations and told the UN, by Israel defending itself in this manner, it protects Palestinian lives.
Yes.
And so I sort of went off a bit from what I was going to say earlier, but I wanted to sort of pinpoint what Israel is doing to defend itself, because the first thing Israel has built bomb shelters for a large percentage of its population. So this week, 1.5 million Israelis actually were taking refuge in bomb shelters. Because I think any new build now in Israel has to be built with a bomb shelter. They've got public bomb shelters, so if you're driving along in your car, you can stop, go to that public bomb shelter. They also have the early warning system, which is a system which detects when rockets are being fired towards them, and then it alerts people in their areas. And so an example of that will be, say, for example, if a rocket is fired towards Israel, the first people that will hear it are the people closest to the border. So, for example, Sderot, they'll have 15 seconds to react. The alarm will go off in Ashkelon, which is about 10, 15 miles further into Israel. They may have 25, 30 seconds. And so there's this movement of alerts that happens. And, our viewers in the UK especially may know about the alert system that was tested by our government a few weeks ago. It's a similar system to that, but it's more advanced and it works effectively.
Yes.
And actually, Israel's exported this technology to other countries. Like Ukraine is now using the early warning system from Israel to alert when rockets are coming in. And so that's the secondary level of defense. And then the third line of defense is the missile system, the Iron Dome. It's not a physical dome around Israel. It is a scanning software that they scan the skies. If the rocket comes in, they'll shoot another rocket into the sky to intercept that rocket and blow it out of the sky.
Yes. And of course there are people, behind this. The Iron Dome is not just an automated system. There are key people that are involved in that. When you do listen to the sort of sources from the IDF, they do speak of it as a dome. Yeah, it's quite interesting. They speak of it as being a protective. Where there is a rocket which hits land, they speak of, the dome as having sort of been, broken into through the dome, that sort of thing. So they do speak of it like that. And when you consider there are, I think, over 90%, was it about 91% success rate?
I know.
That the Iron Dome was able to achieve. It is an amazing thing, which of course Israel has started to export as well to allies. Yeah. But the other thing is that the Iron Dome is for short range missiles, and then there is a new system called David's Sling, which is for medium range missiles. And that successfully intercepted a rocket for the first ever time this week. Yep. It was a rocket which was targeting Tel Aviv, and so that was utilized to defend Israel successfully. And then just as we were about to begin this podcast, I just saw pop up on the news that has been used successfully for the second time for a rocket which was targeting an area surrounding Jerusalem. So I think in terms of things to be thankful for, I think we can praise the Lord that the Iron Dome, David's Sling, have been put to effect and utilized to defend Israel and to minimize casualties. Of course, we are aware that one Israeli was very sadly killed, and of course our thoughts and prayers are with his family. I believe it's a man.
Yeah, man. At the time of recording this, they haven't released the name of the man, so we don't know who it was or how old he was even. There were some other people in the building as well who were injured. I think there was an 80-year-old woman who was injured and another elderly man. But yeah, it's unfortunate because, like we said, it's 91% success rate with the Iron Dome. They do as much as they can to obviously shoot these missiles out of the sky, but not every single one of them can be intercepted. And another thing is as well with the gentleman who was killed, unfortunately, he wasn't in his bomb shelter. And so obviously it could have been that he just didn't have time to get there. He didn't maybe hear the signal or something. And so if he was in his bomb shelter, he may have been alive today. So even though Israel takes all these precautions, there's just either human error or the missile system making an error. Basically, they can't protect everyone, but they do their very best to protect everyone. And I think it's important as well with the David Sling, as you were saying. These are rockets that are much bigger, more powerful.
Yes.
They are now, Israel is now able to shoot them out of the sky as well. And it needs to, because the terrorists in Gaza are producing bigger weaponry.
Yes.
And there is a bigger threat coming. So
they're able to shoot from further distance.
Yeah, further distance.
Like
and shoot further into Israel.
Yeah.
And it's interesting as well. You say it was heading towards Jerusalem.
Yeah.
The terrorists are the people saying, we're going to liberate Jerusalem, liberate Al-Aqsa, and yet they're shooting rockets at Jerusalem. I mean, it makes you question how holy they regard Jerusalem and other things.
Well,
but maybe that's a discussion for another day.
That's a discussion for another time. You do not hurt the things that you
love.
Love and they obviously, we can maybe that's something we could talk about, because there is definitely a difference again when it comes to the Jewish people's love for Jerusalem, the way in which they pray for Jerusalem, long for Jerusalem, have longed to have Jerusalem again as its capital, and that has been fulfilled. But the way in which Israel defends Jerusalem is because the Jewish people love the city which has been promised to them by God, the city which has God's name written on it. The enemies of Israel do not have the same care and love for the things that that God has entrusted to to the Jewish people.
Yeah, exactly.
Just one other thing, or a couple of things really, but we haven't spoken about Hamas in this whole equation. Of course, Hamas are the terror group which controls Gaza.
Yeah.
Do you think they are watching this with interest to see how this is going to pan out? Are they quaking in their boots? Are they running for the hills, or do you think they're preparing to take advantage of this conflict? What are your thoughts in terms of what might happen next?
I think I honestly don't know what's going to happen next, but we have to be realistic. Hamas have said that they are united with Palestinian Islamic Jihad. They have not got involved yet, because Israel is being very careful and only striking Palestinian Islamic Jihad. The other thing to bear in mind is, because Israel has used the tactic of targeting commanders, it now puts fear into the commanders of Hamas.
Yes.
Hamas doesn't want to have their top officials assassinated.
Yeah.
There's a number of different things actually with this, because PIJ is 100% controlled by Iran, and Iran seek the destruction of Israel. Iran is trying to obtain nuclear weapons. It's trying to draw Israel into a larger conflict outside of just Gaza. And from what I understand from Israeli officials, Iran is right now putting a lot of pressure on the political wing of Hamas. And the political wing involves people like Ismail Haniyeh, and he is not based in Gaza. Well, he is occasionally in Gaza, but oftentimes outside of Gaza. And so they're putting heavy pressure on him to get involved and to support PIJ. The only support Hamas have put out at the moment is a statement saying we're united, but they've not done anything. But Israel has to be aware, and is aware, and is very cautious right now, because they could be drawn into a much bigger conflict with Hamas.
Yes.
And there's a few things people need to realize. Hamas, first of all, is the rulers of Gaza. They are the political body that controls the Gaza Strip, the terrorist organization that controls the Gaza Strip. And they are both interested in the political aspects of Gaza as well as militarily. Whereas PIJ, it has one sole purpose, and that is to attack and fight Israel. So PIJ doesn't care politically about Gaza. It doesn't care what happens to Gaza. It just wants to destroy Israel. Whereas Hamas actually have to be more measured in what they're doing. In the last 2 or 3 years, Gaza has actually seen an increase in its wealth, an increase in its quality of life. There's a lot more new builds going up, a lot more restaurants, resorts, all these different things. Gaza is far different today than it was even 3 years ago in terms of its quality of life for Palestinians. There's something that happens with terrorists when they suddenly realize they've got good things in life. For example, the leaders of Hamas are multimillionaires. They live in luxury apartments. If you see some of the videos online where you see where they're living and the resorts they go to, the cars they're driving, they are living a life of luxury. And people with power don't want to give up that power. And they especially don't want to get assassinated when they're living a life of luxury. So I think there is a bit of a thing there. They're also dealing with the political side of things. And Israel has basically, well, not Israel itself as the government, but certain Israeli officials are sort of saying, you know, if we wanted to, we could take out Hamas commanders. We could actually bring about regime change in Hamas if we attack them hard enough. If they want to get involved in this war, we're willing to, you know, let's see what happens, that kind of thing. And so I think there's threats there to Hamas where they are much more wary today than they were last week because of what's happened with PIJ. It's sent a message to them.
Yes.
And ultimately, even though Hamas are a religiously motivated organization, they don't have the same sort of viewpoints as maybe rational people would in our mind. They still have these earthly things going on, which I think is what is probably restricting them and holding them back a bit. If they can see, PIJ and Israel, they're having a tit for tat at the moment, we're not involved, I think it almost protects them a little bit. But will they get involved? Well, it's inevitable that sooner or later, Hamas and Israel are going to have another war. Yes. And I mean, we pray obviously that won't happen, but
and also the state of Israel holds Hamas accountable for everything which takes place in Gaza.
Yeah, and so normally what would happen is if PIJ fired a rocket, Israel would strike Hamas. But that's not happened this time. So I think there is a strategic thing there with Israel where they're kind of holding Hamas at bay slightly. That's kind of my view on it. Yeah. I could be wrong. Hamas could be just about to fire rockets as this goes live on the internet or something. But right now that's my feeling. Yeah. But the reality of the situation is Israel is on the edge of war with a wider conflict. But this is what the Iranians want. This is not what Israel wants. Yes. Iran wants Hamas to get involved for more bloodshed, and with that they will then use their proxies in the north with Hezbollah, in Syria. They will then use it politically against Israel. There's so many reasons why Iran wants this war. Yeah. But right now Israel is doing its best to avoid that war and is successful at this time in stopping more terror groups getting involved.
Yeah. Well, we need to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Yeah. Is anything to add? Because there is one other story I just wanted to mention. Yeah. In Tunisia, there was an attack against at a synagogue, outside a synagogue. It was in a place which is actually one of the it is the oldest synagogue in the whole of Africa. Wow. It is an island called Jerba. Durba. I'm not sure if I've pronounced that correctly. It is actually a holiday destination in Tunisia, and a gunman killed 5 people. First of all, he killed. He was from some naval base. He killed someone on the naval base. Then he went to the synagogue, and right now there's actually an annual pilgrimage taking place at this ancient synagogue. And very sadly, tragically, he opened fire. He killed 2 Jewish men who were cousins. Also some police officers which were there as well. As I said, total I believe is 5. And he himself was shot dead by security forces, preventing what would ultimately have been a much larger, casualty. But as I say, this is this is one of the oldest synagogue in Tunisia, and thousands of people, of Jewish people, go and visit this particular synagogue. It is also the place where in 2002 Al Qaeda committed a large-scale terrorist attack on the synagogue. So it isn't the first time that this synagogue has been targeted. And I just wanted to raise it for our prayers, to pray for the Jewish community there, this faithful community in what is a Muslim-controlled country. There's this small but thriving Jewish community, and of course for all of those people all those Jewish pilgrims that are traveling from far and wide, as well, just to remember them in our prayers at this time.
No, it's a very sad and tragic event that happened there, and it's interesting because I saw last week that there was talk of this pilgrimage happening, and I just kind of brushed it off because it's it's news you see, but maybe you don't know much about. And then this week we discover that there's a shooting attack. It's very sad. And one thing as well is the police apparently shielded the Jewish people with their bodies. The officers that were there, they literally tried to stop the bullets with their bodies to protect the Jewish people. And I think that really shows how, in these moments, there are people who they weren't Jewish, they were probably Muslims themselves, protecting the Jewish community from this gunman, and then obviously taking out the gunman. But it's come about now, it was a premeditated attack. He purposely targeted that synagogue. He may have read that there was a pilgrimage there or something. And I think people need to understand that there is these sorts of attacks that happen, which is the same hatred that is in the radical Islamists who, hate Israel. They also hate the Jewish people. And unfortunately, we have seen so many of these attacks around the world against the Jewish people where this, this anti-Semitic hatred has brought this about. And obviously as Christians, we see things from a spiritual lens, from a biblical lens, and we know that there's, this hatred is put there by, the forces of evil. And I think that's what we're dealing with here. We're dealing with good versus evil. That's what I was saying in a video earlier in the week. It is good. Israel is good, and the terrorists who hate Israel are evil. And unfortunately, this is the final sort of thought I had on the whole situation right now in Israel. We really have to get to the truth. There is so much misinformation on social media, in our media. I've seen reports where the media is just saying things that are completely at odds with the truth. They're saying, Palestinians live in fear because they don't know where a rocket from Israel will land. Yes. The reality is Israelis are living in fear because they don't know where the Palestinian rockets will land. You see it, when Palestinians fire rockets into the air, Palestinian children and youths go onto the streets and start celebrating, and they know full well that they're not going to be struck because they're not where the rockets are. Israel is so precise with its rockets that you see videos of on TikTok and other things, like in the conflict last year, where they already knew where Israel was going to target because Israel phoned the building and said, please evacuate the building, we're going to strike it. So they're there doing selfies while there's an explosion behind because they know exactly where it is, even though they're stood very close to it. the opposite is true in Israel. Israel, they have to everyone has to be ready. That's why 1.5 million people in that area were in hiding, because no one knows where those rockets are going to land. And just so you know as well, while we've been talking, Israel has apparently increased its radius of people who should be in shelter. So it's now gone to about 50 miles or something like that, where so that looks like actually there could be an escalation right now of what's happening. So next week there could even be a lot more that's going on from what we've spoken about. But yeah, the key message I just want to get across is we need to spread the truth about Israel.
Yes.
And as Christians, we need to be really wise about it. We need to read our Bible, understand God's heart for Israel. And when we look at what's going on, we need to look at it through that spiritual lens so that we have discernment of what is happening.
Yes.
Because the world out there doesn't have that discernment.
Yes.
And they are prone to being deceived.
Yes.
And the devil is trying to deceive everyone and use people against the plans that God has. Yeah. And, you know, one of the plans God has is for Israel to be restored as a nation.
Amen.
And that is what happened 75 years ago. And you know, the God of Israel will never forsake his people. The terrorists are never going to win this battle.
Yes. Because
God is on the side of Israel.
Yes.
And
amen.
You know, and we're on the side of God as well. So yeah.
Amen. And I think when you look at it, you know, with that, with spiritual eyes, and you look at the Palestinian terrorists, they are fighting a losing battle, and Israel is fighting a winning battle. And you know, our prayer is that there will be peace. Our prayer is that also that, you know, the Palestinian people will recognize the evil that is being, you know, that is over that land, you know, in Gaza, that they will stand up to it, and that individual hearts will, you know, turn to the God of Israel.
Yeah, amen.
Yeah, the scripture I had thinking about the Operation Shield and Arrow. There's a scripture which includes both of those words, because this is not a battle which is solely on a military front. Yeah, and it isn't going to be won solely, or ultimately it won't be won on simply physical shields and physical arrows. But we believe that in the power of prayer, we believe that prayer makes a difference, and we believe that the God of Israel, the God of Abraham, Isaac and Jacob, is faithful in his word and will defend his people and will deliver his people, and his will be fulfilled regarding the land that he has promised to his people. So we look to the one on high, we look to the God Almighty, and the Psalm 91 speaks of shield and arrow. It says, "He who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, he is my refuge and my fortress, my God, in him I will trust. Surely he shall deliver you from the snare of the fowler and from the perilous pestilence. He shall cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you shall take refuge. His truth shall be your shield and buckler. You shall not be afraid of the terror by night, nor of the arrow that flies by day." And I think we need to be understanding and try. I mean, we're sitting here in relative comfort when we look at you know, the threat towards Israel, and I think we must recognize the what must be a very fearful situation for many. And our prayer is that they will not be afraid of the terror by night, nor the arrow that flies by day. That is our prayer for Israel today, as it is going through or facing yet again an attack by terrorists. But also you mentioned truth, and it says here that his truth shall be your shield and buckler. Yeah. And this shield of truth, defending the lies, standing for what is right and good, standing against what the enemy is intended for evil. You know, the enemy seeks to destroy.
Yep.
The Palestinian terrorists are doing the work of the enemy. They have aligned themselves. They might be confused in what their intentions are, but actually they are doing the work of the devil, because the devil wants to destroy Israel and wipe the face of the earth. That's why we must pray for these terrorists, that they will have a conviction and understanding. But also we have to understand that we're in a spiritual battle. And so here in the UK, we need to put up our shield in truth. Truth against the lies. Truth in defense of Israel. And that's just what I wanted to share. Very
good. I think we both had the same message. We need to spread the truth and defend the truth.
Yes.
Because sometimes when we're dealing with these things, sometimes it feels like you get overwhelmed with the lies. The lies are they go out there so quickly. People just make things up. People spread false information, videos and images that aren't anything to do with Israel, you know, and they spread all these lies, and then the media takes them and, you know, runs with them, sort of thing. And I think, it's very important that we need to spread the truth, and that's also why we need people to stand with CUFI and to support what we're doing. Absolutely. And so anyone listening to this podcast, anyone watching on YouTube, we really do encourage you to please get involved with the work of CUFI, to, you know, go to our website, www.cufi.org.uk, sign up to our email list,
/ donate 75.
/ donate 75 if you would like any of the gifts, and also just to, you know, support the work we're doing. But we just need your support. Like, comment, share, spread this to your friends, send it to people at your church. Help get the message of CUFI out there, because, you know, we do believe we're on the front lines fighting for Israel in the information war, rather than it being a physical war. And so we just ask you to join with us and encourage you to do that, because we need your support. And we do feel your support as well. We appreciate your support. We appreciate you following, of course, and we appreciate you giving towards the cause. CUFI stands for Christians United for Israel. We Christians, we believe the Bible is true. We believe the Bible is the mandate to stand with Israel. We are united Christians up and down the country that have these same values, values of standing for truth, values of loving the Jewish people, of standing with the state of Israel. And that is our cause. And so if you agree with us that this is a cause worthy of involving in, then, as Alex says, please do sign up, give, follow, and however the Lord leads you in what you can do a little bit more this weekend, especially as we watch like watchmen on the walls. We're looking on, and we are not being passive. We're being active, and we are praying, and we are taking action. So I've enjoyed this discussion, Alex. We've covered quite a few areas. They're serious areas, but we can take encouragement also that we are standing on the right side. So I'm encouraged. I hope you're encouraged too. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem, and we look forward to seeing you next time at the next podcast. Thank you, and God bless you.